Imagine being completely alone, forgotten by the world. No home, no name, no one looking for you. That's how a stray dog named Rusty felt. Just another shadow moving through alleyways, invisible to everyone who passed by. But then, he stumbled upon a place just as forgotten as he was. A decaying garden, left to die behind rusted gates and crumbling walls. What started as a desperate search for shelter transformed into something incredible. Rusty, driven by pure instinct and something deeper he couldn't name, began to revive an entire ecosystem. This isn't just a story about a dog, it's a testament to how even the most neglected souls can find profound purpose and inspire breathtaking change. Rusty hadn't always been alone. Somewhere in his distant memory were warm hands, a soft voice, maybe even a home. But those memories had faded like photographs left too long in the sun. Now there was only survival, scrounging for scraps behind restaurants, sleeping in doorways, always moving, always searching. On a particularly cold autumn evening, as rain began to fall in sheets, Rusty ran, not toward anything, but away from everything. The hostile streets, the people who kicked at him, the other strays who competed for the same meager resources. His paws carried him to the edges of town, where the buildings grew sparse and nature had begun reclaiming the spaces between civilization. And that's when he saw it. Beyond a wall, thick with ivy and topped with broken stone, stood an entrance that seemed to exist outside of time. The gate hung crooked on its hinges, as if it had been waiting, perhaps for years, for someone to push it open. Rusty hesitated. Dogs understand boundaries, even invisible ones. But the rain was relentless, and something else drew him forward, a scent on the wind, earthy and ancient, that spoke to something primal in his chest. He squeezed through the gap. What Rusty found on the other side was a world suspended between life and death. The garden, if you could still call it that, stretched before him like the bones of something once magnificent. Pathways were barely visible beneath years of accumulated leaves and creeping vines. Stone benches wore thick blankets of moss. A fountain stood silent and dry, its basin filled with rotting debris. At first, fear kept Rusty frozen near the gate, every sense alert for danger. But gradually, curiosity overcame caution. He stepped forward, paws sinking into the soft, neglected earth. The garden whispered around him, wind through dead branches, the rustle of unseen creatures in the undergrowth. There was something here, something that made his racing heart slow, his tense muscles relax. Despite the decay, despite the obvious abandonment, this place felt different. He wandered deeper, past collapsed garden beds where wildflowers struggled against choking weeds, past a greenhouse with most of its glass panes shattered, its metal frame twisted by time and weather, and then he found it, in the far corner of the garden, sheltered by the remains of a stone wall and the spreading branches of an ancient oak, was a small clearing. Here, the overgrowth seemed less aggressive. A patch of earth, roughly circular, where something in the soil or the light or the configuration of shadows had preserved a pocket of possibility. Rusty circled the spot 3 times, as dogs have done since the beginning of time, and lay down. For the first time in longer than he could remember, he felt something close to peace. This would be his place. In the days that followed, Rusty didn't just survive in the garden, he began to live. He learned the rhythms of his new sanctuary. Morning light filtered through the oak leaves in patterns that moved across his clearing like a sundial. He discovered a rainwater collection in a tilted bird bath, fresh water, pure and cold. And remarkably, the garden, even in its abandonment, offered food. Berry bushes that still produced fruit, vegetable plants that had gone feral but still bore small, tough produce. But something else was happening, something subtle at first. Rusty began to dig, not frantically, not destructively, but with strange intention. He cleared away dead vegetation from around the struggling plants in his clearing. He dug shallow channels that helped rainwater reach thirsty roots instead of running off into the surrounding chaos. He couldn't have known what he was doing, not consciously, but generations of instinct guided him. Dogs have lived alongside humans and their gardens for thousands of years, and somewhere in Rusty's DNA was the echo of that ancient partnership. Where Rusty cleared away choking weeds, dormant seeds found sunlight and sprouted. His movements through the garden created paths, and along these paths, stronger plants thrived. His digging aerated the compacted soil, allowing it to breathe again, and the garden responded. Slowly at first, a few new shoots here, a strengthening stem there. But then, with gathering momentum, life began to assert itself with fierce determination. Plants that had been barely surviving suddenly flourished. Colors that had been muted by decay began to intensify. The deep green of healthy leaves, the bright defiance of wildflowers pushing through. Rusty had become, without trying, without even understanding, a gardener. But more than that, he had become a catalyst. The returning plants attracted pollinators. Bees that had long ago abandoned the garden began to visit again. Butterflies appeared, drawn by the flowers. Birds, noticing the insects and the strengthening vegetation, made the garden part of their territory once more. And in the center of it all, in his clearing beneath the oak tree, Rusty watched his world transform. The forgotten dog had found his purpose in a forgotten place, and together they were becoming whole. By the time winter approached, the garden had become unrecognizable. What had been a desolate tangle of decay was now a thriving sanctuary. Not manicured, not formal, this was no human garden anymore. This was something wilder, more honest. A collaboration between one dog's instincts and nature's relentless will to flourish. A family of rabbits had taken up residence near the old greenhouse. A fox passed through regularly on its hunting rounds. Songbirds nested in the restored hedgerows. The ecosystem had knitted itself back together, filling every niche, occupying every possibility. And Rusty, he was no longer just a survivor. In his eyes, there was something new, a kind of quiet confidence, a sense of belonging. He had a territory to patrol, a garden to tend, a purpose that woke him with the sun and sent him on his rounds. He had been dismissed and forgotten by the human world. The garden had been abandoned and left to die. Both had been considered worthless, purposeless, better off ignored, but they had found each other, and in finding each other, they had discovered something that neither humans nor nature had provided alone. A second chance, a new beginning, and a profound demonstration of how purpose isn't given from above. Sometimes it grows from below, from the soil, from the instinct, from the simple act of showing up and refusing to give up. Rusty's story didn't end with a miraculous rescue or a viral social media post. There was no tearful reunion, no adoption by a loving family. But perhaps that's not the point, because Rusty didn't need to be saved. He needed to matter. And in that forgotten garden, tending to plants that needed him as much as he needed them, he found something rarer than rescue. He found purpose. His story reminds us that meaning isn't always handed to us by others. Sometimes the most profound purpose is discovered in the quiet spaces, in the neglected corners, in the simple act of nurturing what others have abandoned. We are all, in our own ways, searching for our forgotten garden. The place where what we have to offer, however humble, however instinctive, is exactly what's needed. Sometimes the forgotten don't need to be remembered. They just need to find each other. If Rusty's story moved you, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. And if you know someone who needs to hear this reminder about finding purpose in unexpected places, share this with them. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel to support us.